Welcome to the Restless Journey, the official podcast of Austin Prep. This series offers a closer look at the people, programs, and purposeful initiatives that bring our core values to life. Each episode, we invite voices from across the Austin Prep community, students, faculty, alumni, and friends to share insights, experiences, and reflections that shape who we are today and where we're headed tomorrow. Now, let's get started with today's episode of the Restless Journey podcast.
Welcome back to the next episode of the Restless Journey podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Fleming, Senior Director of Communications here at Austin Prep. And we're joined today for this episode by Mrs. Marla Pascucci-Byrne, a legendary figure in our Austin Prep community, synonymous with a lot of things here, longevity, art and design, but I think one thing in particular is the Nutcracker. So we are in the Nutcracker season here today, so I thought it would be an opportunity for us to really dig in and talk about not only this show that's coming up here very soon, but I think kind of the history of the show and what it's meant to Austin Prep. So welcome.
Thank you.
To make you feel at home, every time we have a guest, we have the chalkboard decorated here. So welcome, Miss P. Specifically, the people that decorated the chalkboard this time, Abby, Lexi, and Abby, are all making their Nutcracker debut. They're in your middle school dance class. So they're very much looking forward to being a part of this Austin Prep tradition.
Thank you so much. I'm so proud of them. I am proud of all of my dancers, but the kids who take the stage for the first time have a special place in my heart.
So I think one of the things that we are very proud of at Austin Prep is how we really value and cherish the Christmas season. So we just got back from Thanksgiving break last week, and we are full-fledged into the Christmas season. And there's a lot of things that make Christmas important at Austin Prep. Certainly it's an opportunity for us to celebrate our Catholic identity, but all the fun things that come along with Christmas as well. And I think some of those are special events, our Lessons and Carols tradition. A few years ago, we started a tree lighting tradition outside the front of the school. But the longest tradition that we have in that Christmas season, and maybe even at Austin Prep in general, is the Nutcracker. So we're looking at 30 plus years of the show, I believe.
Correct.
So before we get into like the preparations for this year and the outlook for the show, which by the way is Monday, December 15th and Tuesday, December 16th at the Collins Center in Andover.
Yes,
so that's coming
7
up here.
p.m.
Very good. So before we get into that though, we always talk about this 30-year tradition, and I'd like to maybe put a little bit of like concrete context into when this started and how it started. So
Sure.
think back to that.
Okay, so this actually started long before I even came to Austin. I had danced my whole life. I was in Boston Ballet's Nutcracker for many years when I was in high school and even before, and it was just always a really special, magical part of my holiday season. So when I was hired at Austin, some of the questions as to what else will you be able to do besides be an English teacher here at Austin Prep? Well, the obvious answer for me was I can start a dance program. And Austin had been an all-boys school up until the early 90s. So when I came to Austin, it was still a little bit of an imbalance where there were a lot of boys and not a lot of girls. It wasn't equally matched at the time. But I was still ready to sort of start a dance program. And within the first couple of years, I had these really dynamic girls who just wanted to perform. And so I thought, well, okay, I know this show backwards and forwards. I performed in it for a long time. It's so close to my heart. It's so much fun. It's such a beautiful story. Let's get some of these girls into these roles and let's do a really tiny version of the Nutcracker. So I had one Nutcracker, one Snow Queen, one Clara, and one Mouse. And we told parts of the story, and that was the very first show here at Austin. If we were to look at it sort of geographically, it's sort of down. It was downstairs on the first floor in what used to be called the Mercury Theater to the Stars, and it was a sort of black box classroom, and that's where we did it. And faculty members came. We did it at what used to be called activity period. It was a short little show, and that was the beginning.
So at the time, it sounds like this was something that was done during the school hours, so no family necessarily.
No.
Nope. So I think one of the things that's interesting for me about the show is really the evolution of it. This is my 8th year at Austin Prep, so I've probably seen eight versions of it, and I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about even the evolution of the show during the span that I've been here, because I think it has taken a new and different shape. But maybe go back to those beginning days and talk about how the show grew, and maybe like when did families start coming? When did you graduate to a bigger, better facility?
Sure.
Those sorts of things.
So when we first started, I had these wonderful girls who were so excited. So Allie Mahoney, who now actually has a daughter at Austin Prep, Charlotte Aldrich. Allie was my first Clara. Libby Dowd was my first Nutcracker. Caitlin Trowbridge was my first Snow Queen. And I had various people who stepped in and out of being a mouse, because obviously who doesn't want to wear a pair of mouse pajamas and frolic around? But they were so excited about it. And then as they sort of grew, they wanted to come back the next year and try it again. And can we make it a little bigger? Could we do it after school? Could we have more people come to see us? And then what was so exciting was with the sort of creation of Amelia Hall in 2011, we suddenly had this great home to put our show on. And that was so exciting, because Nutcracker for me has always been about involving as many kids as possible, not necessarily just the kids who have a great deal of training. Having a background in very strict classical ballet is wonderful, and I loved it. I learned so much, but I also wanted to put a spin on it and make it more available for everyone else. So we have so many kids that have never taken a ballet class before. And I think that it's a really nice way to engage everyone and to put a really big spirit of like unitas on our show and just make it available to anyone. So as we sort of started performing in Amelia Hall, the cast began to grow. And so I went from having maybe 20 kids to 50 kids to 100 kids. And then we got really lucky, because the cast started to outgrow the space. And Dr. Hickey said, I have an idea. Why don't we take the show off campus? So we got the chance to go to Andover High School, and the cast was probably close to 200 at that time when he first got here. And one of the things I really was deeply appreciative of was the fact that Nutcracker used to happen every other year. And when Dr. Hickey came, he said, this has to happen every single year. Are you down? Are you ready for this? And I was like, I am 100% ready for this. And it's lovely, and it's been really fun to watch the show grow and to watch kids pull their younger siblings into the show, to see some of my sixth graders pull their older brothers in, to be like, you have to be a party parent while I'm a party child, and things like that. So it's been really fun to watch that evolve.
So continuing with the evolution theme from in a classroom here in the building to the Collins Center, as I was referencing some of the shows in recent years, I think it's also interesting to know the first couple of Nutcrackers I was at Austin Prep for were in Amelia Hall. And I think, as you noted, in some ways you kind of outgrew that space. And then ultimately, before you went to the Collins Center, we had at least one or two shows at the theater
Greater Boston Stage.
Yeah. But even before that, and I think it's a testament to the value that we have for the show, and then some of the other things that we do here was we had, I think, at least one or two COVID shows that were live streamed and in an empty Amelia Hall and masked up characters and cast members. So maybe talk a little bit about what that was like, and then also I think reinforcing the importance that while our world and our existence was shaken for a little bit, we really did what we had to do to make sure that these traditions continued and that these students still had those opportunities.
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that I love the most about the show is that when you look at it from an artistic perspective, there's a very clear, almost like ladder structure. There's like a hierarchy to the parts. So most of the time, kids will start as party children or mice, and then they move up to more complicated roles like maids. And then eventually, as they get into high school, they're doing more, I won't say serious ballet, but more technical ballet than character kind of roles. And so when we were hit with COVID, the hard part was there were kids who were like, but this was my year to be a maid, or this was the year that I was going to be in Waltz of the Flowers, or I really wanted to do Snow. And so in sort of true the show must go on fashion, I consulted with Dr. Hickey, and I said, if I get all of the kids masked, and if we reduce the numbers of kids that are on stage, and if the kids are further apart from each other, can we still do a version of the show? So he agreed, and so we had what we called like our half cracker, because it was half the time and half of the size of the cast, but they had masks that matched their costumes, and we took it to Amelia Hall, and we live streamed it, and it was wonderful because I think for a lot of kids, this is sort of a touchstone of their time at Austin. And they look back and they remember, oh, when I started, I was just a mouse. And then I moved my way through all of these parts. So that was really exciting. And I was very happy that we had, his support and that we had like the sort of technical expertise to be able to bring the show into so many people's homes, because it was obviously a very difficult time for so many families. But then one of the things that kind of holds us together never went away. So it was lovely to be able to be part of that.
Sure. So let's start talking about this year's show.
Yes.
Again, December 15th and December 16th at the Collins Center in Andover. So you've talked about the growth of the show. How many students are participating this year?
So right now we have about 202.
So why don't you talk a little bit about what that process looks like? I think you start practicing almost around the first day of school.
First day of school.
So, the practicing and the learning of the show in dance classes or outside school hours. Maybe talk a little bit about how that happens, and then even you have talked about how you graduate from role to role, but how are people initially casted, maybe in some of those earlier roles, and even as they progress through the show?
Sure. So one of the things that's been really exciting is that the number of students who are in my dance classes has increased so much. So between Miss Clark and we have roughly 6 classes of students who are dancing, which is so exciting. So a lot of what we do in terms of preparation for the show happens within those classes. And we'll have students who are a mixture of kids who have a lot of technical training, who are studying outside and take classes at their own home studios, some kids who used to dance when they were younger and maybe for one reason or another have sort of changed paths, and some kids who are totally brand new to it. And within those classes, we kind of take a look at the classes as a whole and decide what are they going to perform. Most of the time it's based on age and ability. My littlest kids are almost always party children, so the incoming 6th grade are usually the youngest people at the party scene. And then a lot of times I'm very fortunate that I have kids who come back over and over again. So I might know that there is a 6th grader who's really talented and maybe needs another year or two to grow into a soloist role or being Claire or something like that. So after having done the show for so long and performing in it when I was a kid myself, I can kind of spot different things that make sense to me. But what's always super exciting is that there are surprises and things that I may not have thought through, but then I see it and it makes so much sense. And I have to say that almost always happens with the gentlemen in my cast. So there will be boys who are a little bit on the shy side and they'll say, I wouldn't mind being on stage. I wouldn't mind being a party parent. And I'm like, you are hilarious and all charisma. You need to get out there and be the Nutcracker next year, or you need to be the Mouse King. So it's really nice to get to know my cast and to be able to sort of anticipate things that they'll be able to do that maybe at the time they're a little nervous, a little hesitant, but 3 shows in, you're ready to take on something big.
Yeah. And it's almost a little bit like it's a microcosm in some ways of the Austin Prep experience, because I think it's one of the things that's great here about having both a middle school and an upper school is while there's certainly middle school classes and upper school classes, in reality it's one big school, and a 6th grader might be interacting with a 12th grader in the halls, maybe passing, we have different lunches, but you might be in the dining hall at the same time. You see each other, you're on the same sports teams. And I think in particular that opening scene of the show, where we have the party scene and you have the families with the party children are 6th graders, and they might have, I think, mothers and fathers, is that what they are? And typically 12th graders, and they're like a little family. So, and I know that the 6th graders really value that experience. So maybe talk a little bit about how you blend the young and the old.
I think what's so exciting to me is when we have our favorite gift from Dr. Hickey is that we get that day off, our Nutcracker day, and all of the students don't go to classes that day, and then they all come down to Amelia and we rehearse all day long. And sometimes kids don't always cross paths with their party parents, or they may not see them because someone else has a commitment, or maybe it just doesn't work out. And that day, you see these groups of people getting to know each other. And then they also are sitting and applauding and watching each other as the show unfolds. So you get to know people in a completely different way. And maybe this is somebody that you saw, on Instagram, this person's a really terrific, soccer player, or maybe, this girl's just being complimented for getting into a terrific school. But then all of a sudden you're all in the Nutcracker together and you're all watching the show and you're all applauding each other. And I feel like it's just a beautiful way to express our unitas, because they are all meaningful, important parts of the show, no matter how old they are. So from my like tiniest baby mouse and to like my, most accomplished Snow Queen, they're all making this one big mosaic together. And I think that day to me is just so valuable, because you notice someone saying to somebody else like, oh, do you have time to help me with this step? Or can you make sure that I'm doing this the right way? Or I'm really cold, can I borrow your leg warmers? Things like that. And it's just like all of a sudden you just see this family come together. It's a huge family, but it's just always so exciting to me, because I think that it might unite people in ways that, as you said, like they may not have known each other before. And I always love before the party scene, usually the second night, the sixth graders have a tradition of making cards for their parents, and it's adorable. It's just really nice for them to have like a senior friend who at that point sometimes knows where they're going off to college, and you're part of the family now.
So you talked a little bit about specifically pulling boys into roles and into the show, and I think that you've done a really good job of not only boys in general, but maybe athletes who don't have a dancing background or dancing experience, pulling them into
Yes.
appropriate roles for non-dancers. So maybe, what's that process like in terms of finding opportunities for non-dancers to be in the show?
Sure. So the way that getting the boys even involved in the show started was because the baseball players used to usher for us. And so JP would say, if you need a group of boys to usher, my boys will be there, and they'll, be in chapel dress, and they'll be ready to help everybody get down the stairs and get where they need to be in their seats. And I remember thinking that a couple of the boys who had said kind of off the cuff, kind of like, I wouldn't mind being up there. I wouldn't mind being up on stage. And I was like, okay, sounds interesting. So I had put it out there in an email. Anyone who wants to usher, sign up here. But anyone who would like to be on stage, sign up here. And the list was really interestingly equal. So that's how it began. And I think, like anything else in life, if you see that your friends are doing something and it looks really fun, even if you're a little hesitant or a little shy, you think, okay, well, everybody I know is doing it. Let's give it a whirl. And that's how it began. And now it's interesting because this sort of more coveted role of father of the house, the person who owns the mansion, the person who's throwing, this big party, is almost always an athlete. And I just think it's so impressive. I'm always really proud of them because it's a completely different world. But in some ways, it's very similar. There's preparation. There's things you have to do before you go on stage. You have to be paying attention the whole time. You have to roll with any unexpected challenges that happen. And afterwards, it feels pretty terrific. So I'm very proud of them.
So I think what's a great thing about the Awesome Prep rendition, or the Miss P rendition of the show, is that if you're watching this or you're coming to see the first Awesome Prep production, and you've seen the Nutcracker at Boston Ballet or someplace else, or you're a classically trained ballerina or dancer like yourself, you might think this is what the Nutcracker is or should be. And I think you have probably changed that a little bit over your time here, and I think it's a credit to how well you do in terms of building your cast, but then also pulling in different styles of dance or backgrounds. I think in the past we've had like maybe the cheerleaders or the dance team involved with their own very non-ballet component of the show. So what's that thought process like of like, hey, this person is a dancer or a cheerleader or has some sort of other dancing experience, doesn't fit the show, but we still want them to be involved. What's that process like?
So I think what's so exciting is that the second act of the Nutcracker it's all a dream. Clara falls asleep and dreams of this unbelievable world, this land of sweets, and she can go anywhere. So in a lot of the more traditional shows, it's, she goes to Spain and she goes to China, and all of those things are wonderful, and we have the music and the dancers to do it. But knowing that I have really talented kids who have gifts that are a little bit maybe not fitting into that space directly makes it a challenge for me to figure out, well, how can I get this in? So I have 3 really beautiful rhythmic gymnasts. Well, traditionally speaking, classically speaking, there aren't rhythmic gymnasts in the Nutcracker. However, I know that they look beautiful together. And so now this year they're going to be performing Arabian, and I'm so excited to see how this turns out. In the past, I've had rhythmic gymnasts in different areas, but it's always super exciting to me because I know that I have kids that like to perform and that are excited to get out on stage. So now the challenge is just to figure out how can I get their gifts to match what we're doing on stage. And some of them are loose translations. Like I know Clara doesn't actually go to, India. But at the same time, knowing that I have kids with this kind of talent, it belongs out there on stage. So we can take some liberties and fit things in the way that we want them to be, just to be able to showcase the talents that we have.
Yeah. So less specifically about the Nutcracker and more general about the dance and arts program here at Austin Prep. Talk about, as a prospective family, someone who might be interested in coming to Austin Prep and might have a serious interest in dance or a very loose interest of dance. What can you and this program provide for individuals that they're looking at Austin Prep, and this is an additional component of the education here? What would you say to a family that's interested in that?
I think what's exciting is that we can offer flexibility. I think that a lot of students who belong to studios, sometimes there are very strict parameters where you have to be at a studio for a certain amount of time, you have to be there for a certain amount of hours to make a certain level and things like that. What I love about our program is that our students are artists, they are athletes, they play instruments outside of school. They don't have to choose to be just one thing. And I think for me, knowing that sort of the unity of how much art is important and what a huge part it plays in your life, I would never want a student to think, well, I can't do that because I play a sport. And at Austin, you don't have to choose. You can do both. And I think that's just a really beautiful sort of composite of your experience at Austin Prep. If you want to be on stage and you want to dance, you are welcome to do so. And you can also play a sport or be able to have your volunteer experiences after school or your job after school or whatever else that you do that rounds out your life. You're not limited to saying, I can't do that because there isn't enough time. So being able to do it during the school day, being able to take courses in dance or drama or really any of the arts in my department, you can do that and do something else as well. And I feel like that's really exciting because I think that I'm always amazed at the students that I have who have had studio experiences that are a little more limiting, and I always feel like, that's not really fair. You're not in school for very long. Mm-hmm. And during the years that you're here at Austin, I'd love for you to be able to experience everything. So I think that our program allows you to have that flexibility to try it.
So you talk about the experience of our dancers here. So maybe let's talk a little bit about your experience at Austin Prep. Okay. And I think what's really great about Austin Prep, and it might be common in all schools, but this one in particular is, over the years, I think we have a lot of legendary teachers and groups of teachers, and I introduced you as a legendary part of our community. But they kind of go in waves. A few years ago we had a wave of teachers who had been here for 50 plus years had retired and moved on, and now you're almost been passed that torch in terms of being that legendary group that has seen it all here. So maybe talk just a little bit about, in general, your growth and experience at Austin Prep and some of the important things that you think you've built here and contributed to the school community.
Thank you. Well, I feel like it's an honor to be compared to, sort of the legends that came before me. I think that one of the things that was always so helpful to me was, as a really young teacher, I came to Austin right after I graduated from St. Anselm College in 1993. I came that fall, and the teachers that were here were so wonderful to me and just gave me so much support and so much guidance, and just really helped me as I was trying to build this new program. And they would come to the shows. They would encourage their kids to, this looks exciting, sign up, why don't you try it? And it was just a really beautiful feeling of family and being embraced. And I just found that to be so wonderful and so helpful, because as a new teacher, you're always a little bit nervous, especially when you're trying to get a program off the ground. But I was very much supported by the teachers that came before me. And now, having been here for 30 plus years, I feel happy to be able to do that as well. I think that I got very lucky in that my colleague Miss Clark, who is my assistant choreographer for the Nutcracker, is someone I've known for a very long time. I had followed her career when she was my sort of what they call it, your dance studio, your little. She was my little. And to be able to bring her to Austin and kind of help her and mentor her as she's getting acquainted with directing and choreographing here has been just a really great gift. And it's really nice to be working together as part of a team. And I also love that my own students, who I've known for a long time, by the time they get to their junior and senior years, and often much younger because some of them are really dynamic through middle school, they love to choreograph or they have ideas about how things should be. I'm always super impressed every year with Thriller because I have a handful of really dedicated students who make the show look the way it does. So I think it's really fun to notice that the show is mine for sure, but there are pieces of the show that belong to everybody at Austin. And I just am very grateful for the experience to be able to do it every year.
Yeah. Well, the show is definitely yours, and nobody knows the show in a more intimate fashion than you. I'm interested to know what your favorite parts of the show are. I like the transition between the first act and the second act. I believe closes with Waltz of the Snowflakes, right? And then opens the second act with the cloud.
Yes.
Is that what it is? So those are my two favorite parts. What are your favorite parts of the show?
Oh, my absolute favorite part every single year is when the tree grows. It's just, I've heard the music thousands of times. I looked for a very long time to find the music that we use, which is the Philadelphia Philharmonic music. I just think it's the most beautiful version of the Nutcracker. And I think from when the tree grows through the Waltz of the Snowflakes and then the closing of Act One is my absolute favorite thing. And the kids joke around because in the wings, I'm usually like jumping around because I'm so excited. And the music is really powerful. The snowflake dance is so complicated. It takes so long to learn it, and the kids work so hard to get it. And there's certain elements of the choreography that are really hard. And when they all get it at the same time, I just feel like a coach on the sidelines. I'm so proud of them. And when that curtain comes down to close out Act One and Clara goes off to the land of sweets and the Nutcracker's holding the Snow Queen like aloft in a lift, it's just, I'm so proud of them. And it's a little bittersweet because it means it's halfway done, but it's a beautiful moment for me.
Well, you refer to yourself as a coach, and I think you very much are a coach of the Nutcracker. And I think when individuals coach for 30 years as you have, I think they will have a handful of teams throughout the years that they remember. Maybe bad, but we'll talk about the good ones here.
Yes.
Are there a couple groups over the years or certain shows that you recall, like that was a really amazing group?
Yes.
That was an amazing Clara, that was an amazing Nutcracker. What might be some of those years and why did they stand out more than others maybe?
Oh, I think last year's group was amazing because they were all very funny and very friendly. So one of my favorite memories from last year was I had my Sugar Plum Fairy was performing and she was finishing a very complicated sequence, and all of the boys yelled, way to go, almost in like true sports, like dugout fashion. So they weren't really sure if you were allowed to yell in the wings or if they should be yelling in the wings, but they just kind of decided like, well, that's what we do. That's one of us. So we're going to cheer that person on the best way we know how, which is screaming from the sidelines, which I thought was adorable and lovely. But I think that one of the years that stands out to me with so much clarity is the class of 2010, because I had 16 lifers and they all danced for me the entire time that they were at Austin. And so I have a really beautiful photo of all of them in their graduation caps in the dance studio. And they were just an unbelievable group to work with. I think that was a year that I really boosted the show up. The enrollment was so big in the show of kids who had done it so many times. And they were really special. And I think really all of my Nutcrackers and all of my Claras are chosen very carefully. I think they have to have really good chemistry. I think they have to both be fearless. I think that there's a misconception that the person I choose as Clara is just technically strong as a ballerina, but there's a fearless element to be lifted that way, and you are being lifted by someone who's not a professional dancer, but you have to make the entire audience believe in the magic of Christmas. And with this handsome prince character, you have to be able to get the audience to come along for the story. So I'm always really careful about who I choose and how I choose them. And they have to match. And so I think that's always a bit of a challenge, but it's always really fun. And now I have a lot of people, especially the boys, who kind of will throw their hat in the ring the year before just to be like, what do you think about me doing this next year? So I take that into account too.
Very good. Well, again, the Christmas season here is very cherished and important to us, and certainly the Nutcracker is a key part of that. So we'll look forward to seeing you December 15th and 16th at the Collins Center in Andover. Is there anything specific this year that we should be on the lookout for that you're especially excited for?
Oh, I don't want to give away the surprises, but there are many surprises and some special guests that I think everybody will enjoy.
Well, I very much look forward to that. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And really, thank you for everything that you've done for our school over the years. You've been a great colleague of mine, and I appreciate all the things that we've worked on together, and hopefully many more projects to come.
I look forward to many more creative collaborations. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.